Tales of Fantasia. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Ngunnawal people of the Bundjalung Nation. I'd like to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of this land and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome back to Tales of Fantasia. My name is Sine, and today we are continuing on with Aussie Author August by reviewing A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwan. And I just want to start by saying I think that this might be one of my favourite books of 2026. I absolutely adored this book from cover to cover, and I have A Forsaken Prophecy, the second book in the series, sitting on my shelf just over there waiting for me to dive into that. And I'm really looking forward to continuing this story. I was lucky enough to get a signed copy of this when I was down in Sydney. I got it from Abby's bookstore. And also a signed copy of A Forsaken Prophecy, which is really cool. It's really nice going to the city where I'm from. We don't have a lot of authors signing books. I'm from a small country town in Australia. And so it was really cool to get to go to the big bookshops when I was in Sydney the other week and to pick up some signed copies of a couple of books while I was there. Now, Stacey describes this book as being a little bit like Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo crossed with Peaky Blinders. And I haven't actually read Six of Crows yet, but I can really see that this is Peaky Blinders with magic. And I absolutely was captivated by this story very, very quickly. The main character, Nina, is a relatable, flawed female main character. The male main character, Patrick Coulson, has absolutely everything that you want in a male main character in a romantasy. He is witty and gritty, and he's flawed, and he's loyal and protective. He's giving touch her and die vibes without actually saying it or leaning too far into any of the cliche tropes. The basic premise of this story is that Nina and Patrick are from really poor mining towns in Belvedere Trench, and they head into Belvedere City when they're 12 years old to go through the siphoning ceremony, as every 12-year-old does, to find out whether they belong to the upper class of artisans who possess magic or whether they are forever destined to toil away in the mines in the poorer outskirts towns of Belvedere Trench, which is known as the Brink. Nina's lifelong dream is to become an artisan. Her mother had always told her when she was younger that she was destined for bigger and better things, while Patrick just desperately wants to go home to his family. So together they discover a secret. Artisans aren't born with the genetic code to possess magic. They're chosen by the officials in Belvedere City so that the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor. Very much it's a matter of maintaining the status quo. So Nina goes on to take some idiom from the stores in Belvedere City and she turns into an artisan, while Patrick heads home to be with his family. And then years later, a craftsman revolution has boiled over and it's being led by a group called the Miners' Union. And at this point in time, Nina goes into hiding. She goes on the run. She doesn't want to be discovered by either side. She doesn't want to be used as a weapon by Belvedere City against the people she grew up with and the places that she came from. And likewise, she doesn't want to be used as a weapon by the Brink to destroy the artisan world that she's come to belong to and come to know and love. But of course, as with all great plans, it has to come to an end, and Nina is actually captured by the Miners' Union. And you know, that's when she discovers that Patrick is at the helm of it, and things get really good from there. This book does a really great job of balancing the fantasy elements and the, political elements of the story with the romance and building that romantic tension. It is a slow burn with the romance, and I think it's just a really genius book. It's a premise that hasn't been overdone in romantasy. It's not Fae, it's not Shadow Daddies, it's not fated mates. It's just people and their flawed, complex, and wonderful lives and feelings and emotions. And I really, really love that about this book. Stacey McEwan is a really skilled storyteller. And I think, sometimes it can be easy to kind of dismiss her as a TikTok star turned writer, but she actually is an incredibly skilled writer. She paints a really vivid picture of what this world is like, and I really felt transported through the pages to Bellevue City, to Kenton Hill, and I really felt what the characters felt. I loved the way that she builds the really complex stories of the side characters in this book. The whole Coulson family are really tight-knit and they're really fully fleshed out characters. Same with Theodore's shop and Polly. Excellent side characters, and plenty of complexity in the side characters, not just the two main characters of the book. This book left me with my jaw hanging on the floor. The ending of it was just so heart-wrenching, and it ends on just the biggest cliffhanger. So I really can't wait to dive into A Forsaken Prophecy. All I can say about this book is if you've seen it around and you've been a little bit hesitant to dive in, I would really, really encourage you to just give it a go. I think, as I said, that it's going to be one of my favorite books of this year because it just was a breath of fresh air to me in, I've read a lot of romantasy last year, and this year I've been trying to read a little bit more broadly, read some different genres, but this was a romantasy that I can really get behind because it really breaks the mold of what we've come to expect from a romantasy book or a romantasy series. Something that Stacey does really, really well in all of her books, but in this one in particular, in my opinion, is that building of tension while still maintaining a good pace to the plot. I think that that's something that's really difficult to do as a writer, to build the tension and increase the stakes and increase the stakes and increase the stakes again and again and again. Knowing that you're building to this climax while still maintaining enough interest in the story in that messy middle and enough, forward momentum in the story as that tension is building. And I think she's done it really well here with the plot as well as with the romance. Both of them are building at their own paces and they're both, coming to this climax. But you're totally gripped by the story and you're not feeling like you're waiting for anything. If you know what I mean, like you're feeling that tension build, you're getting more and more invested, the stakes are getting higher and you are waiting for the penny to drop or for the other football to drop. But at the same time, you're happy to be along for the ride. You're just riding those waves of the story. I don't think that's an easy thing to do. And I think, that this book is such a testament to her skill as a writer in that, she's crafted this incredibly rich and detailed world, incredibly rich and detailed characters. And, she's got all of the plot elements are moving at the right pace. And yeah, I'm just blown away by this book and by this story and these characters. I genuinely feel like Patrick Coulson is probably going to be my male main character of the year. He is just dreamy, and the way that she's written his voice as well. Stacey has given him, I said that it's, a little bit of a mix between Peaky Blinders and Six of Crows. And, Peaky Blinders, it's Irish, Irish people. And she's given the Coulson family in this book that sort of Irish drawl, but given it that regional dialect, that regional accent of, being from the East in the Brink. And I think she's done that really, really cleverly. They've got a really unique voice, especially when you're, comparing them to Bellavia city residents, the artisans, where she describes their speech as being clipped consonants and rounded vowels. That is what we in Australia and England would consider to be like a posher accent. And I think that she's done a really good job of giving that, relative class distinction by accent in a way that we would understand it, but still giving it that element of this is a made up fantasy world, and that those accents are obviously, their own accents, but you can really hear that Irish influence in the Coulson's accents. And she's done a really great job of making the dialogue really three-dimensional and making that really clear on the page without it seeming stilted, which is such a skill. As a writer myself, I really struggle writing dialogue, and it's something that Stacey seems to do effortlessly. I'm sure there's a lot of thought that goes into her dialogue in her books, but she just pulls it off every time in such an incredible way. I really enjoyed the magic system in this book as well, the different classes of artisans. I found that really, really cool. And I really loved the juxtaposition of what you think or what society thinks the artisans are versus what they really are. I found that really interesting. I could go on and on about the magic system in this book and the significance of Patrick and Nina being who they are and what they are, but I'm just going to let that rest for now because I don't want to give away any spoilers. Like, everything I've told you about the plot of this book you can read on the back. So I haven't given away any spoilers on what happens really in the story, and I don't want to start doing that now by going too deep into the magic system and the way that this book kind of plays out. So yes, that is it. That's all for this week. My review of A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwan. I am so excited to be sharing with you guys. I have been approved for an arc of Unaware by Jess McFarlane, and I will be interviewing her on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm hoping to get her book read over the next few days. I'm also really excited. I picked up a copy of Daggermouth today, and I will be reading and reviewing that book with a special guest on the podcast in a few weeks as well. We're going to buddy read the book and we're going to deep dive it together. So that is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have some great guests on the podcast coming up, and Aussie August is not over yet, so you can still expect my review of Unaware before my interview episode with Jess drops, and also probably a review of A Forsaken Prophecy, because I can't wait to dive into it. So I think I'm just going to jump right in with that book now that I've finished this. I do need to read that arc before my interview with Jess, so I'm going to read my arc and then we will be diving into A Forsaken Prophecy. Hope you're all really well today. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast, and please, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean so much to me. If you could leave a comment. If you've read this book, tell me what you thought. If you haven't read it yet, tell me whether this review has influenced you at all to pick it up or to put it on your TBR. Have a lovely day, and I will see you next week.